Good afternoon. This is Michael Harding.
And this is Christina Harding.
And we're here with On the Arts.
Woohoo!
That show that is dedicated to blowing the lid off of all those little artistic secrets that we have here in southern Utah so that they are secrets no more.
No more.
There's so many opportunities down here for you to not only observe art of all forms, dance and music and theater and also visual art, but also to participate. And we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to know about what's out there for them. So we actually had the opportunity to go attend a concert at the restaurant Even Stevens the other night.
Yes.
I'd never been there. This was for a jazz concert.
Yeah.
That was actually a lot of fun. Some unexpected things going on.
Well, yes, we got to watch, I believe it was the Glenn Webb Quintet, but it wasn't actually a quintet, as you pointed out, because there was a few more playing. But
it was a sextet.
It was a jazz quintet, yes. And they played 80s hits with their jazz ensemble, and they were pretty good.
Well, I have to say, it was quite a surprise, not only the fact that there were 6 of them instead of 5.
Yes, that kind of threw us. But,
I am happy that Dr. Glenn Webb, who we did have on the show not too long ago, actually, he did make reference to that, so I didn't feel like such an incredible nerd sitting there in the audience.
You kind of kept having a problem with that. You kept counting and making sure,
But they actually, when they started playing the 80s songs...
Yeah, threw us at first.
Yeah, we were thinking, I know that.
I know that
song. Cyndi Lauper?
Yeah. Or Take My Breath Away. They did that Top Gun numbers, too, And
it was, done with a vibraphone and a trumpet and, a bass guitar and a drum set behind.
They improv'd great,
Oh, my gosh, they sounded really fun. And
Urban jazz.
There was even a song that it started playing, and I knew it, but it was such an interesting arrangement, a jazzy arrangement. What was that?
Because I Have Been Given Much, which is a LDS hymn.
Exactly.
to jazz.
I was listening to the melody, and it was just different enough that it was, I thought, was that a commercial for Oreos when I was a kid? Or
we started wondering.
There are all sorts of opportunities like that.
Well, and in 2 weeks, about 3 weeks away, they're going to have their Jazz Fest is coming up. And
Absolutely.
It will be here at Dixie State University. Well, actually, it's at the Cox Auditorium is the big concert, but at Snow Canyon High School is where they're going to hold their Jazz Fest.
Right. And by the way, wasn't it Snow Canyon Middle? And this was something that actually blew us away at the
Snow
Dickens
Canyon
Festival. They have a jazz band, and it is a middle school jazz band.
Middle school age, yes.
They were top quality.
Oh.
I was stunned.
We were blown away by how good these kids were. Yeah.
They were pretty amazing, I got to say. And so we've got those concerts going on and such. We still invite people to come on downtown to see the artwork that is on display. The Big Spider, which has been quite a controversy on this show.
I love that arachnid.
I want you to know you're using the word "we" rather liberally there. No, I think it's a wonderful piece of art.
It's beautiful.
It's the spider thing that
but
I have an issue with.
It's getting the reaction that it needs to get.
Absolutely.
People are reacting. They're responding. That's art.
Art.
Right? We can talk about it.
It makes conversation.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, that's one of the fun things about this show is Christina actually had the idea for this show, a little bit ago.
I was crazy, yes.
And we got things going and a show
just
about the arts.
Just because I like to talk to people. Right. I like to know everything. So.
We have a forum here, and I think we have at least 12 people who listen, which is wonderful.
Oh, well, I think we're up to 13 now.
Whoa.
Yeah,
we dare to dream.
Yeah. We say this every week. Every time we say how many listeners now. I wonder how many we actually have.
I don't know. I would actually be very,
I wonder
very
how we
interested.
Can find out.
I think we do have a Facebook page. If you go to On the Arts, a Facebook page will come up, as well as Radio St. George. That's Radio space ST space George. And on that page, you can actually see archived video of these radio shows.
All our guests.
I have to admit, I didn't dress quite for the video when I first started. I thought, oh my gosh, nobody's going to see me.
Yeah, we didn't want to be on the video first. That was a huge surprise, a rude surprise to us. But yeah,
I think several of our guests come in and say, oh, I would have done my hair or something like that.
Yeah, they're always in shock that they're going to be on video.
but I'll tell you, in doing this show, it's been such a wonderful opportunity. We hope that it's been fun for our fans, all 13 of them, to listen to and such. And we call this affectionately Season 3 of On the Arts.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing how many artists of all forms, all genres, have been willing and wanting to come on and chat about what they do.
We are approached many times about wanting to be on the show and talk to us, and I don't think that people quite understand. Not only is this a show to advertise for our different art events around town, but it's also to get to know the people that are behind those arts. That's what we think is important. Is these are just everyone has a background, everyone has a story, and sometimes we get guests in here who do go very detailed into their lives and start sharing with us their past experiences. But we feel like that helps someone and motivates somebody else to get up off the couch and start their own artistic endeavors. And
these are real people, folks.
And you and I always end up talking for at least an hour after these shows.
That's one of the benefits. I mean, we talk about how art spurs conversation.
Yeah.
You and I have great conversations, and I have to say there's also the advantage of I get to know these people who I've heard their names.
Yep, they're human beings.
Sometimes up to a decade. It was just 2 shows ago when I finally met Heidi Anderson.
Heidi Anderson.
I had heard her name for 10 years and never met her. So what a wonderful opportunity.
And also, we have to bring up, too, that because of this show and many shows like this, we're bringing down the walls and getting people to create friendships and connect with other people, and that helps their businesses grow also in the arts and communicate with the friendships that develop in this community. But it brings down those walls too, and you get to see these people behind the stage or behind, the curtain, as we say, the Oz, the wizards.
I've just been thrilled at the breadth of people we've had, even here in season 3.
Yeah.
We started off with a seasoned vocal coach and actress, Heidi Anderson, and then of course last Thursday we had Elizabeth Steek, who is quite not only a standard, I guess is that the way to put it, a classical dancer, but also has these wonderful interests in aerials and wonderful approaches to art and such.
And yes, she was great. That was a great interview. I couldn't be here that day, but I learned so much from her, and I thought I want to go take dance from her.
Absolutely.
She's exciting. Yeah.
Well, and I would say a lot of people, they think, because of course you're in my background, it's mostly theater, but you have a lot more musical background and such. And people think, oh, we're going to hear Michael and Christina's friends, and this is just their tea party on air.
Yeah, it's a tea party on air. That's true.
It's a raucous tea party on air. But we also, we have people from all the different genres, if you will. We've got artists and painters, and we even have a curator who's going to be coming on later in the season, Kathy Cecilewitz. And we're going to be having some writers come on so they can talk to us about what they do. Today, we actually have a very special guest in the studio, someone who was willing to come back. So that must say something.
Yes, we brought him back.
We've got Jamie Young, who is the artistic director and executive
producer.
Executive producer of Brigham's Playhouse. Welcome.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Jamie.
It's so good to be back.
Yes, we're glad to have you back.
Now, last time you were on, we talked a lot about you, and we're still going to talk about you.
So much more to learn.
Exactly. You piqued our interest. But there's something that I've been really thinking about with Brigham's Playhouse particularly, and that comes down to the business side of show business. And in thinking about that, an experience I had when I was an actor in Seattle. Of course, you have times as an actor where you don't have a contract, where you're working the day job, if you will, the temp job. And, of course, I had about a month and a half off between contracts, and I thought, well, I'll get a temp job and I'll work during the day. But I found that I was really missing acting because it's just something that I like to do. It's something that I love to do, that I'm very good at, I hope. And I found myself missing it as I was working my desk job. So I had this brilliant idea of calling up some of my artist friends and saying, well, let's just meet at Seattle Center. Of course, that's where the Space Needle is, and Seattle Rep and the Intiman and Seattle Children's Theater. And I said, let's just get together out on the lawn and let's just play with some Chekhov. and I remember
just play with Chekhov.
Yeah.
Let's just throw him around.
Simple material.
Maybe you should tell our listeners who Chekhov is.
Oh, yeah, Anton Chekhov.
Yes.
And he was not to be confused with Michael Chekhov, but this is a whole other show that we can put on here. But Chekhov, he wrote plays like The Cherry Orchard and The Three Sisters, plays that most people have heard of if you don't know what they are.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to just get some friends together and keep our chops alive, not do a full production at all. And in fact, sometimes when there have been readings of plays, they've been better than some of the the full-fledged productions. I remember I was part of a reading of Streetcar Named Desire, and that was the first time I ever dealt with that play in Seattle. And I'll tell you, the power in that room. Tennessee Williams practically showed up. Now, don't mistake, he really didn't show up. But getting together with my friends, I was amazed at the response I got when I called them. The first response was, well, is there pay involved? And then I thought, well, no. And they're like, well, we are union. And I was like, well, yeah, so am I. But this isn't really for a performance. I just want to work the art. well, what theater is this through? It's not through a theater. This is just getting together.
How dare you?
And it was all these business questions. And I was amazed at how business, it doesn't necessarily take over, but there's this whole side of the arts that requires a business mind.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to give you my impression before I will actually let you talk at some point, Jamie. I promise.
No, I'm fascinated by listening to you. It's great.
Well, I heard that you were coming down from Wyoming, and you were going to open a theater. And my first thought was, well, we've got lots of theaters here. Is this going to be a professional theater, community theater? I don't know. And frankly, that's a question I've got that I would love to chat about. What is professional? What is community? What is amateur? And I have to say, my thought was, I don't know if that's going to work. Bringing something to St. George. And I have to say, boy, you have been successful, and we want your secrets on this.
Yes, Jamie. Spill all.
So, Jamie, my first question to you is, when you decided to come here from Wyoming, why did you think, I'm just going to start a theater? It wasn't just a group getting together to do theater. You wanted a theater.
Yeah, I answered this question recently in a newspaper interview, and it kind of took me off guard for a few seconds. But one of the reasons why I wanted to start a theater is for 20 years I had been teaching students the art of theater and teaching them how to create these amazing auditions so they can go and get the jobs. But there's 100,000 plus union actors now, and in New York City, there's less than 2,000 roles a year that are distributed for all of those union actors. And so I wanted to create a place where my students could, and by my students I mean all theater students and all theater aficionados, and give them a place where they can come and practice their craft and have those opportunities to express themselves through the arts. That was one reason. Another reason is I had worked in state-funded institutions for a long time and loved that experience, thought that was an amazing laboratory for me, and I was able to incubate a lot of ideas and a lot of methods and techniques. Loved that. But there was some limitations to the types of shows that I could do or the types of shows that I couldn't do, and I wanted a place of my own where I could create theater that I was specifically interested in, and I have hopes to be able to expand and grow into more than just one theater. I hope to eventually, have 6 or 7 different sites where I'm able to produce theater. So this was the first step to that larger picture, I guess you could say.
Well, when you say have different sites, are you talking about franchising out Brigham's Playhouse, or?
Well, I don't know that I would necessarily franchise it, and I don't know that I would call it Brigham's Playhouse. Brigham's Playhouse was named because of Brigham Young's love of southern Utah, and he has a home here, summer or winter home, and he just loved the St. George area, and he's my great-great-great-grandfather, and so it made sense to call it Brigham's Playhouse, but I don't think that name would work in other locations. But we would like to be able to start theaters in 6 or 7 different places.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be great.
When you say places, are you talking locally or throughout Utah or even throughout the West?
Yeah, just, I've looked at Branson. I've looked down in Arizona, Colorado, California. So, a few places, maybe even up in Idaho. There's a place up in Idaho I'm looking at. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it sounds to me, I don't know much about Branson, Missouri. I'll tell you, I know stereotype of what's up there. And I think we've mentioned on the show before, there was the Southeastern Theater Conference auditions that I was a part of, and those were cattle call auditions. The only thing I know of Branson, Missouri, and please know this is not representative. I have to give that disclaimer on this, but my introduction to Branson, Missouri was this show, and it was called Coco at the Piano. And I remember it was one of the auditions that you could go to, and their big thing was 3 grand pianos on stage. And I thought, wow, that's not quite the theater I trained for.
Right.
I don't know much else about them than that. Would Branson be a place that you would like to start musical theater, or like some straight theater there?
There are occasionally a musical or two that run in the Branson season at any given year. Musical theater is obviously not their forte. It's not what everybody does there. But I think because of that, if you could take a really good show in that fits the demographic of who goes to Branson, I think you could make it work. And so I've played with taking a couple of different shows there, and one of them wouldn't have worked, and once I began researching it. And then there's another one that I want to take there that I think would do really well there. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, what I'm loving here is, even listening to you talk, you clearly have that side of the brain working that is the administrator, and can work show business. That's something that I want you to know I admire quite a bit, because you've already proven yourself as an artist, certainly, and with the success of Brigham's and how it's working right now, I think you're actually the complete package, is what it seems.
Well, maybe you should have my wife on the show next time, and she'll tell you what I'm really like.
We should.
Pulling my hair out.
We'll do that.
Yeah, it's show business has been a definite learning experience. For 20 years, I taught students how to create their own opportunities, because in theater, if you wait for somebody else to give you that opportunity, you're going to be waiting a long time in some cases. And so I felt like my students always needed to learn how to create their own opportunities. And so I had show business or opening a theater company as part of my curriculum for my students all of those years. Oh boy, I wish I could go back and teach those classes again now. Because the last 5 years, I've learned what it's really like. And of course, I had run other companies, summer stock companies and things for years before starting Brigham's Playhouse. But this full-time theater, 12 months a year, it's a completely different...
You never leave.
No, you never leave. And there's so many surprises. I tell a story about... in our first months of running Brigham's Playhouse, I got this bill from the state, or it was a fine from the state for $1,600. And so I called him, and what's this fine for? He said, well, you didn't pay your restaurant tax. I was like, I'm not a restaurant. I'm a theater. And I said, you sell popcorn? And I said, yes. And they said, well, you're considered a restaurant under the state guidelines, and so you have to pay a restaurant tax.
I would have never known.
I would have never known either. And so, I mean, there's just these trial by fire kinds of lessons that I've been learning for the last 5 years. And just right when you think you know what to expect, you get another surprise. So,
well, and I can imagine too that the getting your name out there was quite a challenge in the beginning too. No one knew what's Brigham's Playhouse.
Right. That was our biggest challenge. Is I didn't have any ties or connections down here whatsoever. I mean, I'd seen Michael at some theater conferences and Varlo Davenport and a few others, but there was no real relationships or connections. I had a few students that were down here at Dixie. So I was kind of crazy. When I look back, why would I come down and start a theater in a place that I had no connections? So it's taken a long time to start developing.
How did you start that process then of getting to know the community and advertise, and how did you grab volunteers to come and help you?
Well, I went after we had put a lease on our building and contracted for our first shows in our season. I went and saw that you're going to roll your eyes at this. This is like a horrible story. And, looking in hindsight, I'm like, why did I do this? But anyway, I went out and saw Les Mis in Hurricane. And after the show, Hurricane. I went out and I met all of the actors, and I handed them an audition notice for our upcoming auditions. And they went inside and started talking about this guy who was trying to poach all of the actors from Hurricane, and I didn't know what the culture was down here, and didn't know that certain theater companies are pretty possessive of their actors, and I crossed that line. And
Oh no!
so that took a while. In that first show, we only had 5 people show up for auditions.
What show was it?
It was the Pirates of Penzance. I was trying to do a royalty-free
love
show.
that show.
Do you need more than 5 people to do Pirates of Penzance?
And so, we ended up try to hold auditions again and again, and we just had no response. So we changed the show, and we decided to do a musical version of Little Women. And we had about 11 people show up for auditions. We needed a few more, and so I actually ended up having to hire a bunch of former students to come in and fill a lot of the roles.
Gaps. Mm-hmm.
And so that core group of about 8 or 9 former students ended up helping us get over the hump where we didn't have connections, we didn't have a reputation down here, and little by little, more and more people started coming out to our auditions and helping us. So that's how it all began. It was kind of rocky.
Yeah. How many would you say now you have volunteering and on staff? And
well, we could always use more.
Of course.
That is for sure. And, since we've started, there have been 4 or 5, maybe even 6 other theater companies that have got up and going since we've been down here. And yet the
bunnies.
The talent pool, the talent pool has grown some, but not at the same rate as the opportunities. It really is an actor's market down here. An actor can choose between 5 or 6 shows at a time that they can be in. And so we need more volunteers, but we have people who want to help us now run spotlights and work backstage and come help with sets. And we have actors that show up for every audition. It's not like up north. My experience in Wyoming as a professor there for 12 years, I really tapped into the Wasatch Front market. And, they would have 300 to 600 people showing up to each of the auditions up there.
Wow.
At those theater companies. And I thought Utah is Utah is Utah. And so, I'm pleased when we get 50 or 60 to show up at ours, and it's usual that we only have 25 to 30 that are showing up to our auditions. So still room.
Yeah.
But
do you think that's because people are not aware of it, or do you think that it just is? Do you think it's in demand, or what is your take on this?
Well, I'll just be honest, and I think that there are a lot of people who would like to be involved in theater. Maybe they were in high school, maybe they were in college, but life has just kind of taken them away. And those are the people that I really want to reach. And those are the ones that I think they just don't know that it's accessible and that it's something that we want them to come out and do. But then there seemed to have been, and I could be totally wrong on this is just my observation, there seems to have been a culture here of wait until I'm asked. Wait until someone calls me.
Wow.
And
if only.
Yeah. And it's been interesting because we've had to, for certain roles, we've had to resort to that because that's been the culture here. And there's a group of actors that are just kind of out there, and we'll call them up and say, hey, we'd love to have you come try out for this part. And so we've kind of fed that culture. But because usually you have a group of people who come to the auditions and you get to select them, but we've had to reach out
to them.
Please come.
Please come. Yeah.
Well, you talk about the culture down here and such, and I want you to know I'm coming from a place of not formal training. I have to start with that. The best training I've had in business has been watching Shark Tank on television, which I thoroughly enjoy. What I've gotten from Shark Tank is that you really have to create a product that nobody else that nobody else has. You mentioned that you came down to a place where there were already theaters and other theaters have popped up. What makes Brigham's its own product? It certainly has made a splash. What is Brigham's that is unique?
Well, when I answer this question, I don't want to give the impression that am disinterested or dislike other theater companies, because I really do enjoy the work that everybody is doing down here.
Oh, yes.
But we all have to have our own niche. We all have to have the thing that we're known for, and something that I have always valued in my career is we have a motto that we put on all of our literature. It's called "Feel the Difference." Feel the difference. And to us, it's very important that we create an empathic theater experience so that the audience comes and they're not just entertained. They're not just pleased with the dance steps and the harmonies and the glitz and glamour of the costumes and the sets, but that they're also moved and they're changed as a result of their experience. And in order for an audience to have a truthful, empathic experience where they're feeling not for the characters, but feeling with the characters, the performance has to be based on truth, real emotion, real motivation. And so we go to a lot of effort to make sure that our actors are truly motivated and experiencing real emotion while they're on stage. It's typical for directors who are in a hurry to set movement and blocking and staging, and maybe even tell them how to say a line or something.
As an actor, I can tell you hate that
Yes.
with a
Yeah,
passion.
we're both kind of cringing, right?
Yeah, I call that product-oriented work.
Right.
But if you focus on an organic process, one that allows the actors to create and discover and reveal the characters, then you have a much more lifelike experience. And that's one where the actors can really connect with the audience, and the audience really feels like they're a part of the story and that they're experiencing it right with the characters. And so, to answer your question, not in a nutshell, that is what I hope our niche is that the audience can feel the difference, that they have an empathic theater experience. Now, Michael, I've seen some of the shows that you've directed, and Christina, I've seen the ones that you're in, and you all create that same kind of theater.
Thank you.
And so we're not alone in that, but that's what we really go for. And to see that in the musical theater realm is very, very rare. And that's what I've built my entire career on, is heightened reality, but making sure that both of those words exist, the heightening and the reality. And so that's Feel the Difference.
Well, your theater space is unique too.
Yes,
It's very intimate.
It lends itself very much to this approach, because the audience. I mean, I'm performing in one of the shows right now, and there's
what show is that?
It's A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Yes.
But we, I step off the stage, and I literally have to watch out for stepping on the audience's toes.
Yes, it's very close.
We're very close to the audience, and it lends itself very much to them feeling like they're a part of the story.
Yeah.
What's nice about what you just said is you're not just a businessman or an administrator. You get your hands dirty
Yes.
in there. Now, you are an actor in this show, and of course, you've directed quite a bit at Brigham's. Let's talk about your acting just a little bit. Where do you come from as an actor?
Well, I think most of us start in the world of theater, performing, and certainly I did in high school. That was my passion, my love. I loved performing. I loved singing and dancing as well. So, and then when I discovered that there was a college degree where I could do all three, singing, dancing, and acting,
Brilliant.
Yes. Who could imagine?
Yes.
And so all the way through college, I mean, college programs kind of lean, especially in undergraduate levels, lean towards preparing actors and technicians, designers and things. And it's really not until your senior year or until your graduate school where you start looking at other things like directing or playwriting or those kinds of things. But so I kind of got my start performing like that. I was a professional performer for 3 years. I played a mime character in an amusement park, and everybody would laugh at the job, but I was having a great time, and I was the highest paid performer on the park. And so I didn't mind, and it taught me an amazing amount about comic timing and interacting with your audience. And So I've had other professional gigs as well, but that's...
You were training to be a triple threat, I'm assuming. And by triple threat, of course, someone who can sing, who can dance, and who can act. I'll tell you, I've never been a triple threat. I can act in the singing and the dancing, so I kind of consider myself, if not a threat, a mild irritant in the business. And what have you.
Yeah.
But how musical theater, certainly if you look at the season of Brigham's Playhouse, it's a lot of musicals, save for one of the pieces. How do you choose your musicals? There's a ton out there, but...
Well, I use analytics. That's the business term.
Coming out there.
I look at what our past records have been and what our audiences down here prefer. And then I try to balance that with the artistic side. So finding what the customer is going to pay for, and find the messages that we want to convey, and the stories we want to tell, and then I try to find the bridge between those two worlds.
And if you're watching on either Facebook, the live stream that we have on Radio St. George, or on YouTube, which we also do a broadcast on, you may have seen I had this little wry smile when you said the messages that you want to put out there and such. And I'm saying this with a wink, by the way. You have a play called Wait Until Dark. And I have to wonder, what's the message in this one?
Well, I think I think that there is probably more entertainment value in that show than there are other values. We always, even in A Gentleman's Guide, it could be fairly surface and pretty silly, tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, but in order to accomplish the type of theater, the feel the difference kind of theater, you have to really find the meat behind every one of these roles. And that character in Wait Until Dark, the resilience and the grit and the determination and courage, those kinds of things, we all need that in our lives these days. And so that'll be what we focus on with the actors. The audience probably is not going to walk away with some significant change in their mind about, I have to be more courageous and fight all of these villains out there, but
they might.
They might.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
They'll always turn on the lights very quickly when they get home.
Yes.
Well, I know you play several characters in A Gentleman's Guide. True? How many characters are you playing?
I play 9 characters.
9 characters.
If only more had shown up to audition. No, it's written that way.
It's written this way.
Yeah.
And so this is a funny musical.
Yeah. It's a story about a poor man who discovers that he is the heir to a large family inheritance. There's 8 other people in the family line of succession to that large fortune in front of him. And he finds out that these other 8 people have been very mean to his mother. They disowned her. And so he feels like he has a cause for revenge, and he has better plans to use that money than the way they have used it. And so it's kind of a Robin Hood kind of idea. But he devises a plan to knock off each one of those 8 family members. And each one of those family members is played by one actor, and that is me in this particular case.
Wasn't there a movie that Jerry Lewis was in, The Family Jewels or something like that? He played all of the uncles.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's fun. There's male and female roles, and old and young, and it really stretches me. And each one of them sings. Well, not each one, but I have about 8 different songs in the show. So
fun. And then this goes is it every weeknight, or do you have a matinee?
We run Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 7:00 at night. And then and then we have 2 shows on Saturday, so we also do a matinee.
And that's at
2:00.
2:00. Oh, wonderful. And then you have another show coming up. You just are having Camelot open next month.
Right.
And we all know Camelot.
Yes.
We should know that out there in audience land.
Yeah.
Right?
If not, you can come check it out for the first time.
And that opens in February?
Yeah, it opens on February 22nd.
22nd, so right after Valentine's.
Yeah.
What a perfect gift. Just give it a week later.
Something I noticed as well, and this is something that I've known Brigham's Playhouse for, is your commitment to kids. And we do a lot of talking about kids in the arts on the show with various guests and things. I noticed that in June and July, you've got The Wizard of Oz, the Young Performers
Yay.
Edition. What is that?
Well, it is the story of the Wizard of Oz, but it's by contract. We work with Tams Whitmark in that particular case to only cast 18 and younger in the show, and it's part of our summer camp experience.
Fun.
Where we've been bringing in almost 130 kids per summer, and training them, giving them classes and opportunities on stage to perform, and then they run the show for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you, I hear very good things about the productions in general, but I always hear people and see people just sparkle when they talk about seeing these kids on stage, just having fun and showing what they've learned.
Yeah. Yeah, and we try to use this same process that I was speaking about earlier with them as well, and it just gives them a place to be able to be themselves and to really open up and express themselves. We've seen some miraculous experiences for these kids in not just performing paradigms, but also in their own personal development.
Their development, yeah.
We've had kids who've suffered with self-harm, or a sibling who had just committed suicide, or other kinds of things where it was a very healing experience for them just to be a part of what we do.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned something earlier when we were talking to you before the show began, and this is something I learned new about you, that you had worked at a facility where theater and the arts were used to help folks. What was that about?
Well, the name of the school is Lava Heights Academy, and it's out in Tokerville. It still is running. I left there so I could focus more on Brigham's Playhouse just about 5 or 6 months ago. But for 5 years, I helped to start the program out there and to infuse the arts into every aspect of the youth's experience. And the youth out there have different kinds of troubles, different kinds of backgrounds, and they come from all over the country. And it's a residential treatment center, and we use the performing arts as the principal form of treatment. I was in charge of the artistic side of things, and we hired drama therapists, music therapists, dance movement therapists, visual art therapists to come in and work with these kids. And I've always been called a closet drama therapist by my friends and my former students who have gone on in that career, because my approach is pretty authentic and pretty real as I'm working on stage with my actors. And so it lends itself very much to that process and to that approach. And so it was an easy or a logical transition for me to have a stint of my career where I was able to use the arts directly for healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that recently, not only do you do the Chestnuts, if you will, the musicals that everybody's heard of, and you give opportunities for children and such, but you have some original stuff that happens at Brigham's as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a few things over the past few years, hasn't it?
Yeah. I've this most recent one was our own version of A Christmas Carol. When we started advertising for the show, we hadn't even written it yet, and so
there's some pressure.
Yeah, and I would have changed the way that we've advertised it initially too. But we did a modern musical retelling of A Christmas Carol, and we decided to change the name of the Scrooge character because people had stigmatized what he was like, and we wanted to really dive into what made him the way he was. And I didn't want people's previous experiences with the Scrooge character to kind of taint their ideas of that. And so we named him Everett B. Blythe, and
I like that.
Yeah, and and we really we use Charles Dickens' writings all the way through, but we kind of flushed out most of the time the ghost events that happen are really flushed out in a lot of detail. We wanted to flesh out his early childhood. And,
so you went back. Okay.
Yeah, and it's all in Charles Dickens' writings, but it's usually just skimmed over, if at all, presented.
Okay.
And so we really spent the first act on why he became the way he was.
And will you be bringing that back this
Yeah,
year?
this will be the one. We were waiting to see if it would do well, and it did well. It was actually our best-selling show of the year.
Nice.
Good.
And so we'll bring it back again this next year with some revisions. We learned a lot.
Yeah.
It's first time around, but
That's
so that's the most recent. I did another show called Misfitting In that I wrote. It was based on a real life experience that happened in Wyoming when I lived there with my family. A little girl was at a class swimming party, and the kids teased her about wearing a life jacket. She was a fifth grader. They teased her about wearing a life jacket, and she took off that life jacket, and she ended up losing her life. And that just haunted me so much. And so I did what artists do when they're haunted, and I created a piece of art to kind of express how I felt about that, and I wanted to change the outcome for other kids.
Yeah.
And these are musicals that you've written. Was that a play or a musical?
Yeah, it was a musical.
So and I understand you have a gentleman named Taylor Williams.
Yes.
And does he do all of the composition for Brigham's?
Yeah, he has so far. He's an extreme genius, a musical genius, and I love working with him. And so he's written everything that we've done at Brigham's Playhouse. The Misfitting In was a show that I had written in my last years as being a professor. And so I had a student there by the name of Rick Ray wrote that show. But Taylor does all of our tracks and everything for us.
And by tracks, that's the orchestrations that you hear? Or
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Do you ever have live ensembles there for musicians?
Occasionally, that's what I prefer, because it is a much more, I've used the word a lot, organic experience where the musicians are right there feeling the energy of the audience and the performers and are able to meld with all of that. And I prefer that. It's just not practical for our small space.
Right.
And whenever we do, it's only a 2 or a 3 piece combo.
Well, that's where I understand this is just something I've heard. I don't have experience with it. With Cirque du Soleil, which of course performs in Vegas, has kind of taken over Vegas when it comes down to it. I asked a friend of mine who was a musician in one of the shows, what's it like playing the same show twice a night, 7 nights a week? After a while, that's got to get monotonous, as any artist knows. Doing it over and over, that is part of the challenge. But he said, enough things go wrong. And he let us know that it's not always, a fatal mistake or a physical mistake, hopefully not.
Right.
But he says what's wonderful for the musicians is when something doesn't go exactly right on stage, it's their job to keep the show going and riff around whatever they're doing until they can get the show back on track. And he says they're all it's kind of like going to a NASCAR event and you wait for that car crash. They're always waiting for the one person to miss their entrance.
Which we've all done.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, now that I'm on the other side of that, and I'm standing under the lights and singing every night to the canned music, I'm wishing that I had a conductor and someone who could get me back on when I get off. The other night, we had a prop failure in the middle of this little interlude, and we were trying to fix the prop failure before the song started again. And for those moments, it would be really, really nice to have a live orchestra.
Well, now you have auditions coming up, and this is for Crazy for You.
Yes.
And I saw, too, that they said no tap dancing experience required.
Yeah, we are tapping in the show.
Okay.
But we have one of the best hoofers on the planet, Dale Hoops, who is going to be teaching the ensemble how to tap dance.
Oh, so if somebody doesn't know how to tap dance, but they so desperately want to get into a musical, don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
'Cause you got Dale.
Yeah. We would love to have people come and audition and be a part of that show. It is such a fun show.
Oh, that's going to be
George
a good
and
time.
Ira Gershwin music. And,
Yeah, they shouldn't feel intimidated at all. Just get on over there and do your best and have fun.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to give any false expectations to people, but remembering that theater is illusion. Up at Seattle Children's Theater, they always have understudies because, of course, you're working in this big petri dish of children. 1,000 children a day come in, so they always have somebody ready to back it up. I was asked to be an understudy one time for the show was The Adventures of Mrs. Pigglewiggle. And there was a lot of tapping in the show, and I laughed when they, offered it to me. I mentioned earlier I'm not a triple threat, more of an irritant, and I don't dance. I just plain don't. And, I laughed and said, I don't tap. And they were like, yeah, well, you probably won't go on. That's fine. Well, I got that call, that dreaded call, which actually is kind of exciting. And I ran over to the theater and I said, I tried to tap. I can't. And the stage manager just laughed. She says, we know you're not going to have taps on your shoes. Just move your feet.
Just move your feet and have the facial expression right
Exactly.
there. Yeah, look alive.
I had a lot of people come up to me and say, we didn't know you could tap. And I was just like, oh, yeah.
Just look at my face, not my feet. Right.
Now, I am not saying that there's that kind of falsity at Brigham's Playhouse, but certainly there are ways
Gotta
around.
have a good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. And so we're so glad that you came on today again.
Well, it was a pleasure to be here.
This is great and a great way to start off the year. So anybody who's out there who wants to and is thinking about auditioning, Brigham's is a great place to go audition for. And I have to mention again, I mentioned this last time you were on, the cookies at intermission. You can smell baking cookies sometimes in that theater. And they are heaven, heaven at intermission. But you have your actors come out and help sell the cookies so they get to interact with the audience.
Yep.
And that's one thing I noticed too about your theater is you always come out and introduce yourself and talk. You give away prizes at the beginning of every show. They give away prizes. And it's like everyone just kind of relaxes and it becomes a big family party. And then the show begins.
Yeah, I kind of got that idea when I was sitting in a restaurant a few years ago, and the chef himself. You've all been in all been in the restaurants where that have happened, but the chef himself came out and went to each table and how was your meal and formed a relationship with everybody. And I thought, I'm kind of the chef of this theater, so that's why I do that.
It makes it for a fun time.
And now that you know the state considers you a restaurant anyways.
Exactly.
So you bake the cookies.
So let me ask you, if people want to come see Gentleman's Guide, is there a number they can call?
Sure, yeah. Our phone number is 435-251-8000, or they can also get tickets at brighamsplayhouse.com.
Got it.
Oh, fantastic.
That's fantastic. Well, Jamie, you are welcome on the show anytime.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, we need to have some of your actors come on.
Oh,
We'd love to
great.
get to know some community members that have been involved and some of your professional actors that have been involved.
That would be great.
That would be a lot of fun.
I've seen Dale. I've never met him. That's what this show is great for. I get to meet people.
Well, I know Dale. I've worked with Dale, so I know some of his secrets.
Yes.
I shared a dressing room with him.
The hard-hitting journalism of On the Arts. So what do we have coming up on the show?
Well, we have on Thursday, we have, bringing it up right now. We have auditions coming up for Santa Clara Shakespeare in the Park. They're a new group, and they're just starting up, and they're going to be holding some auditions. And they said to go to sccitysshakespeare.org for all their information. I believe the auditions are starting tonight for them. So that's a new thing. So we'll have them on the show and get to know why they're doing what they're doing.
Heidi?
Yes, Heidi. Yes.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, we're excited. I was very excited to see that they're going to do that. And it's Midsummer Night's Dream. So it's about time we brought some Shakespeare around right?
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Bring it down from Cedar. So let's do it. Yeah.
Right. And that'll be on Thursday.
Yes.
What day are we on? Is
we
this
are
Tuesday?
on Tuesday.
We had the holiday yesterday.
Yeah,
Everybody's
we're
walking through the
thrown
halls
off.
saying, is this Monday? Is
Right.
this
Yes,
Tuesday? I don't know.
Yeah.
But we do have quite an array of guests. We hope that you'll join us here for On the Arts. We'll be every Tuesday and Thursday. There will be, of course, news and weather, and then we will dive right in just after 4
Just be
p.m.
patient. We'll be on right after the news and weather. So
We'll bring you those little secrets, that little news there.
And if you'd like to be on the show, please contact us on our On the Arts page. Just message us, and we'll get you on. We'll fit you into our schedule.
Right. And until you hear from us again, please remember to keep your focus on the arts.